Hey, welcome everybody to VBC Happy Hour on this March 6th, which in Pennsylvania is actually Persian Gulf Veterans Day. I think we're the only state in the union that has Persian Gulf Veterans Day. So if you are a Persian Gulf veteran, happy day to you. I'm Todd DePastino. It's also the first program, VBC Happy Hour, we're doing for Women's History Month. And as part of Women's History Month, we're doing part one of a two-part program with I'm calling nine Purple Heart women warriors. These are 9 women who are profiled beautifully in a wonderful book by Ron Farina, Vietnam Marine. Ron, thank you for joining us. Ron wrote the book Out of the Shadows, Voices of American Women Soldiers. It's a book that came out last year. And I'm grateful to Ron for connecting us to some of the women that he profiled in the book. And I'm also grateful to Wayne Smith, and I see Wayne is with us tonight here in the Zoom room. Thank you so much, Wayne. This all started with you. This all started with an email that Wayne sent me, connecting me to Jennifer Hunt, one of the women profiled in the book, and then connecting me, and then Jennifer and Wayne both connected me to Ron. And this, you really generated, you were the spark that put together this two programs here with these remarkable veterans with a remarkable story. So thank you, Wayne. And I want to just say, and I'm saying that also to encourage other people, if you have connections, if you have somebody who you think story needs to be heard or shared, if you know somebody who would want to share a story, please do let us know. This is what we're all about. Before I get into a little bit more what we're all about, I want to welcome back our Director of Programming, Sean Hall. Oh, look at that. Now he's got Isaac with him. Sean, as you know, has been off for a month on paternity leave because he had a new addition to his family that he did not name after me. Unfortunately,
it was in the running, but
I know
I got
it was in the running. Yeah. I know, but this is Isaac. How is Isaac doing? Oh, is he sweet?
Yeah, he's super sweet. I had my BBC shirt on earlier, and I was all excited to come back tonight, and then he messed it all up. So I had to change. But wanted him to say hi tonight, to greet everybody. Say hi, Isaac.
Isaac.
Your sister's at her grandma's, and she just texted us and said that Avi said, "I love the American flag." I said, "That's my girl."
Oh, that's so wonderful. Oh, how terrific. Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Sean, who'll be my wingman tonight, co-host here. And good to see you, Isaac. You're a lot bigger than when we saw you a month ago. Yeah. And it's good to hear that the Hall family is healthy and happy and all together. So thank you so much, Sean.
It's good to be back. So I'm excited to see everybody tonight.
It's wonderful to have you back. The Veterans Breakfast Club is an organization based here in Pittsburgh, where I live. This is Veterans Breakfast Club headquarters, the attic of my house. And we've been around for 15 years doing these programs where we just gather veterans to share their stories with members of the public and have conversations about the military experience, past and present. Our mission really is to educate and inspire people like me and people like Sean who haven't served, and also to connect and heal veterans who come to our events in person and online to talk about their service and what it means to them. And we hold our online program is this VBC Happy Hour that we hold every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. And these are, if you haven't joined us before, these are just friendly, interactive, informal conversations. We do welcome and encourage everybody here on the Zoom room to ask questions, make comments, provide insights. If you are a veteran, we do ask. I think this is a nice practice. If you are a veteran, just put in the chat, when you served, where you served, what branch of service. And then, of course, if you have a question for any of our guests or anything that we're discussing or have a comment or insight, we do invite you to just raise your hand. You could raise your Zoom hand. You could raise your actual hand. You could put something in the chat, anything to get our attention, because you cannot unmute yourself. Only we have that power. Only Sean and I have that power. And that is, we've learned that lesson the hard way, to unmute. We'll ask you to unmute, and then you could unmute yourself. I also want to thank our sponsors, because as you know, we have sponsors for our programs. We're very grateful to them for sponsoring. And hold on a second, I have to get my act together here. Right here. All right. Current slide. and share my screen. And, our longstanding sponsor for VBC Happy Hour has been D&D Auto Salvage. And they are an auto salvage and metal recycling state-of-the-art facility with 2 locations, Lawrenceville and Tarentum here in Western Pennsylvania. They've been around for 50 years. They deal with individuals and companies. They can do large projects, small projects, and they give good rates on metal recycling. And you can check out their rates. You can check out more about what they do at dndautosalvage.com. That's dndautosalvage.com. And we are also really grateful to Adagio Health. Adagio Health is a nonprofit that focuses especially on healthcare for women and for families. And they have a special program to encourage people to quit smoking and quit tobacco use. You could, if you are looking to quit smoking or quit tobacco use, you could use their 1-800-QUIT-NOW line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW. And they also advocate for policies to so we could have a safer places to live, work, and play, and educate the public about the hazards of tobacco use. So we're very grateful to tobacco-free Adagio Health. You could check out more about what they do at tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org. Now I want to turn and introduce these remarkable veterans that we have joining us tonight for Women's History Month. These are 9 women, and unfortunately 2 of them I know cannot make it tonight. But these are 9 women who all joined the military, went to war, and came home wounded, and have, continued living and thriving successfully after coming home. They've been profiled in this wonderful book by Ron Farina, who served in Vietnam in the Marine Corps. But strangely, all these women are Army. And they are, I think the ranking member of the group is Vivian Cochran. Hello, Vivian. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Connie Johnson, I know, cannot make it. She is actually briefing members of Congress on veterans legislation, so I guess we'll let her off the hook. We have Tara Hutchinson, who is in San Antonio. Hello, Tara. She may be muted. So we will be hearing from Tara later. We have Lana Duffy, who is joining us. She won't be able to join us on March 20th because she'll be at Baffin Island. Hi, Lana. I'll be muted. Jennifer Hunt. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, everyone.
Good to see you. And Marlene, you are with us too, and from San Antonio. And Kendra Garza. I don't know if Kendra has joined us. Sean?
She may have just joined us.
Okay. And then we have Maggie. And Sean, we'll just keep a lookout if any of these veterans come into the waiting room, we'll make sure to get them on and have them share their stories with us. But I thought I would first, Ron, I'd love for you to say hello to everybody. And Ron, I know that you were kind of supported and helped and encouraged in writing this book by a Duke, a Belgian Duke, and you have his aide here with us tonight, Roger Huizen. Hello, Roger.
Hello.
Joining us from Belgium, where it is past 1 a.m. Ron, what is your connection with Roger?
Let me give you the 2-minute rundown on how this all started. So it's actually the Duke's connection with the brother of my original writing mentor, Mary Collins. And when the Duke, through Roger, asked Mary if she would either write the first book out of Who Will Have My Back, which was about caregivers to disabled veterans, she said no and suggested that I do it, and connected me to Roger. Roger and I talked a bit, and I was really very uncertain about whether or not I would do it. Roger was convincing, and we did go after the project, and we successfully completed the first book, which is a short book about caregivers to disabled veterans and organizations that are also caregivers to disabled veterans. But after that book, I proposed a second, and that was the book that we're talking about this evening. And Roger interceded on my behalf, convinced the Duke to support the second book in return for yet a third book, which we're writing now. The third book is titled Life Looks Different Now, and this is about families of fallen soldiers from Iraq and Afghanistan. But the best thing that I can tell you about Roger, and he can tell you more about himself, my understanding is that Roger did serve in the theater in country. And again, the best thing that I could say about Roger is he is truly the glue that held all of this together. And I truly believe that without Roger, we wouldn't have even progressed beyond, or not beyond, but to a first book and now a second and a third. So my hat is off to his skill to keep it all together for us. And I think the best thing that I could do is really let Roger speak on behalf of the Duke, because again, without the Duke's support, probably none of this happens. So Roger, please.
Thank you very much, Ron, for your very kind words. Hello, everybody from Belgium. As Todd explained to you, it's just past 1 a.m. in the morning and at this side of the Atlantic. As Ron explained to you, I served. I'm a retired Belgian Army colonel. I was deployed in the Balkans, in Bosnia and Kosovo. I was also deployed in Afghanistan 2 times, in the Central African Republic, in Mali, and in Congo. So I spent in total about 3 years serving deployed in operational missions. Please allow me to explain briefly the Duke Leopold of Arenberg's, as well as my own personal involvement in this book project. During the Second World War, Duke Leopold of Arenberg's mother survived 3 Nazi concentration camps. And his father was liberated in April 1945 out of a Gestapo prison. He was expecting a sure death, and thanks to the arrival of American service members, he could escape that prison. So the Duke of Arenberg wouldn't be living today without American intervention, and he doesn't forget. And 60 years later, he went over to San Antonio, Texas, to visit a certain Colonel Al Metz, who as a young lieutenant liberated his mother and his father in Germany. As for myself as a little boy, I heard numerous stories from my grandparents, explaining how American service members liberated their part of Belgium in 1944 and then beginning of 1945. I heard them explain how they took care of my grandparents, how they got coffee and canned beef and cigarettes and juice and so on and so on. And when I heard their stories, I got fascinated about what American service members had been doing for my country. And honestly, it was after those stories that I decided to take up the gun, not to kill, not to destroy, but to protect people, to do exactly the same things as those American service members had been doing 60, 70 years before. And the question I ask myself very often, that is, where do the US get such exceptional men and women willing to sacrifice everything, even their lives? And Duke Leopold, as we discuss often, he exactly asks himself the same question. Where do those qualities of the good and noble arise in America to produce such an embodiment of our most precious qualities of sacrifice, loyalty, bravery, and patriotism? And we, the Duke and I, we think that is at your dinner tables, church pews, classrooms, and firesides of Middle America, that those latent qualities, your qualities, ladies, are forged. It is the distillation of those qualities in the cauldron of war which makes you so different from the rest of us, which makes you so much the best part of us. And often we are shamed by your sacrifice, by your fierce loyalties, by your stoic acceptance of unimaginable hardship. So you serve, you endure, you persevere, and you suffer, nameless and invisible to the wider world, whose safety is your constant gift. You carry the banner of civilization to foreign shores, and there on some windswept, boulder-strewn parapet on the edge of chaos and barbarism, you plant that banner. And standing there, you thumb and call to us in words that echo down through the ages. Sleep soundly, you say. Sleep soundly, because no one will hurt you tonight. And we in my country, in Belgium, we know how lucky we are to sleep beneath that blanket of freedom and security America provides to us. And we are very grateful every day that you have the fortitude and dedication to give so much to make that happen. So thank you, sisters in arms. Thank you for everything you have done, also for my country and for the Belgians. Thank you very much.
Wow. Roger Huzen, what a beautiful tribute. Ron, you're fired. He's writing the next book. That is beautifully worded tribute, Roger, especially coming from somebody who is a career military officer. And then thank you finally for staying up well past your bedtime. I know you have to get up in 4.5 hours, so feel free to drop off if you'd like. But thank you. It really was a wonderful addition to have you kind of introduce the subject and explain the Duke's support and your support for the book. Thanks, Roger. Ron, do you want to give people a sense of what the book is like and maybe do a little short reading?
Yeah, I think I'd like to launch right into the reading, and that potentially will give folks a flavor. It's an excerpt, certainly not the whole story, or we'd be here for a half an hour just listening to me. I want to get it down to like maybe 7 to 10 minutes. It's a story. My goal is to publicly read every one of the women's stories, and I'm getting close. Got maybe three left. But this story is Tara Hutchinson's story, part of it, and it's called 18 Minutes. And when I get to the end of this excerpt, you'll understand why. Starts out with a little epigram that explains Tara's early years. When I was 15, all I wanted was to go off to some other world, a place beyond anybody's reach, a place beyond the flow of time. And this first paragraph will begin to explain that epigram. So at night, lying on a mattress in a barracks at Fort Leonard Wood, hands behind her head, Army Private Tara Kathleen Seaman, her maiden name, stared into the dark Outside, temperatures dipped below freezing. January cold seeped through the walls of a half-century-old cinder block building, and in the morning, before sunrise, she'd be doing push-ups in the snow. Unable to sleep, she listened to the sounds of a room filled with soldiers, all of them women. Their heavy breathing, coughs, the soft rustle of blankets, the complaint of a mattress, its springs way past their sell-by date, kept her awake in the dark. She muttered to herself, "Why the hell did I do this?" Her feelings for the Army, boredom, resentment, the gradual dawning that maybe, just maybe, joining the Army had been a mistake. But the Army, unlike anything else that she tried and walked away from, wasn't something she could just up and quit. In her early weeks as a raw recruit, she discovered that the main thing wrong with the Army, besides falling out for physical training at 0 dark 30, was being told what to do and when to do it. Army life didn't feel like the independence she craved. Army life was all about rules, and Tara had never been big on rules. Anyone who knew her would not have seen a soldier in the girl who'd run away from home half a dozen times before starting high school. Certainly not Linda and Kenneth Seaman, Tara's mother and father. Whenever Tara felt some imaginary slight, whatever wrong she believed Linda and Kenneth had inflicted upon her, too strict, not enough freedom, you don't understand me, she ran. Each time she ran, she went a little further and stayed away a little longer. She even landed in a halfway house for runaways, and even they couldn't keep her from running. Whenever the reality of the street life would catch up with her, always cold, hungry, always at risk, she'd find her way home, and Linda kept the door open. Whenever Tara returned, Linda tried to keep her there. Counseling rarely worked. Tara just became angry. Linda more confused. The result, always the same. Tara returned to the streets. Baffled by Tara's troubles, Linda continued to try and rescue her daughter. Kenneth, too exhausted by Tara's antics, or maybe too busy building a life as a commercial pilot after flying helicopters in Alaska National Guard, left Linda to figure out how life would work for all of them. Alaska winters don't have much sympathy for runaways. Eventually, the balance shifted. Tara simply tired of street life with its harsh realities. She began to spend more time at home and less time on the streets, and she managed her way through high school and into the University of Alaska Fairbanks, enrolling in a criminal justice program. When Kenneth decided to move the family from Eagle River, small town outside of Anchorage, to Oregon, Tara went her separate way. She left college, packed up a few things she owned, one of them a boyfriend, and moved to a little town outside of San Francisco. Almost a year later, she called her mother. "Mom," she said, "I'm never going to marry this guy. Living with him has cured me of that, and I've got to get out of here. I don't have a car, and I don't have any money. I need help." Linda and Kenneth drove from Oregon to San Francisco, collected Tara, no questions asked, and brought her home. Within months of returning home, a familiar disquiet began to surface, a feeling Tara recognized and couldn't fight. Full circle, she'd landed back under her parents' roof and into a going-nowhere retail job. 22, no money, staring at an empty future, she searched for an escape. Military recruiters come across plenty people like Tara, young, directionless, aiming for something bigger, but not knowing what that something is, feeling worn out before life has really begun, searching for a way past the dead end in front of them. Tara walked by an Army recruiting office on the way to her dead-end job at Nordstrom. She hadn't given the posters plastered in the window much attention until now. The military. A lot of people join the military, but I don't want to go in the Army. Maybe the Air Force. I mean, how tough could the Air Force be? That's it. I'll join the Air Force. That's my out. The Air Force was tougher than she thought. Living an easy life at home, Tara had put on pounds. The Air Force turned down her enlistment. She stopped into the Army recruiting office. The Army said yes, conditionally. They gave her a goal. She She'd have to meet a qualifying weight standard, pass an enlistment physical, and do it by a specific date. Now, there'd never been much in life that motivated her to push herself, but now, desperate to get out from her parents' house, she worked her butt off, literally. She lost 40 pounds, passed the physical, and enlisted, doing it in just 2 months. In the world she'd lived in before the Army, Tara had never been sure of her footing. She'd never aimed for anything bigger or farther than staying one jump ahead of the bad things that happened on the street. Now, Army life, structure, direction, discipline, all of it began to nudge her toward more than she'd ever been forced to do before. She completed boot camp in the spring of 2000 and began to find her footing. She wasn't in love with the Army, at least not yet. But by the time she enrolled in AIT, training to become an MP, budding courtship slowly blossomed. MP training captured her interest. Tara flourished. She turned away from a life that until now had been blown sideways, squared her shoulders, and leaned into the wind. Tara was becoming a soldier, a good soldier. Almost 2 years later, after garrison duty at Fort Bragg, Tara, ready in queue for an overseas deployment to Korea, watched as the Twin Towers fell. Army units around the world ready to deploy at a moment's notice. Furloughs were canceled. Soldiers on leave reported back to bases everywhere. Permanent change of station orders were delayed, change scrapped, while the whole world held its breath. Country western singers quickly penned patriotic tunes. Toby Keith promised to put a boot in your ass. Hank Williams Jr. growled, "America can survive. America is gonna survive." Alan Jackson, more reflective, asked, "Where were you when the world stopped turning that September day?" By December, most of the world exhaled. Tara celebrated an uneventful Christmas as part of the 249th MP unit at Camp Humphreys in South Korea. There was a lot more in store for her at Camp Humphreys. Her platoon sergeant, a chiseled, in-shape, spit and polish, high-speed sergeant major, took a personal interest in Tara. He worked with her, getting her in the best physical conditions of her life and teaching her how to soldier at an even higher level than she'd already reached. She modeled his approach to soldiering. She sought out more responsibilities, developed a training program for Korean soldiers, Koreans attached to the U.S. Army. The program actually became known as the School of Standards. Koreans, Tara quickly learned, took orders by consensus. Tara would give an order, the Korean soldier stood and stared, and one soldier, probably the one who had a basic understanding of English, would turn to the others. They'd circle, and an animated conversation, complete with hand gestures and nodding and shaking of the heads, generally went on for 7 minutes, and grunts and oohs and ahs would fill the air. Eventually, the spokesman would turn back to Tara. "Okay, Sergeant, okay," he would say, indicating that he understood. And more often than not, something really got lost in the translation. It was funny until it wasn't. On the rifle range, Tara instructed a young Korean soldier to point his rifle downrange towards targets. He nodded vigorously, shouted the standard Korean reply, "Okay, Sergeant, okay," then executed an unexpected about-face, his weapon now pointing at Tara. Weapons instructors and soldiers in queue, and everyone ducked. The soldiers flashed a smile. Tara turned him around, muttering an inaudible obscenity. Almost 2 years later, after arriving in Korea, already promoted to staff sergeant, Tara redeployed back to Fort Leonard. She attended NCO school, part of the requirement for her rank. Anxious to continue her climb through the ranks, she met with her platoon sergeant major for a career assessment. "I want to become one of the fastest women ever to become a sergeant major," she said. "I want to do a tour as a drill instructor. I enjoy training new soldiers, showing them the opportunity the Army has shown me. Wait on drill instructor school, staff sergeant. If making rank is your goal, what's going to help you more is deploying to a combat zone. Become a drill instructor after a tour in Afghanistan. The 463rd MP Company is slated to deploy to Iraq by the end of the year. Put in for a transfer, and I'll see that it gets approved and you can join them." To train up for their deployment, complete and certify the squad lanes, simulated field exercises to declare squad leaders battle ready takes months. And by the end of 2005, the 463rd was ready. A lot of training had been grueling. The intent saved the lives of soldiers. The training included weapons training, map reading, land navigation, calling in life-saving air support and medevacs, tactical response to ambush IEDs, and extensive emergency life-saving first aid. Tara learned how to insert IVs and keep soldiers from bleeding out on the battlefield. I'm going to skip just a little and move this along a little bit. So by the, let's see, as the middle of January 2007 neared, the 463rd stood waiting on board a C-130 that would fly them into Baghdad. From there, they'd roll out to a FOB west of the Green Zone. The day turned into a classic military hurry up and wait. Ordered out onto the runway by 0800 on what had been an old Kuwait Army airfield, Tara and the 463rd waited late into the night to board the airplane. Forewarned about a rapid descent into Baghdad, an evasive maneuver to avoid any potential enemy fire, Tara still turned white as a sheet when the plane seemed to plunge into a steep dive. She dug her fingernails into her thighs and held her breath. "Holy crap," she muttered. "That scared the hell out of me." One of the other NCOs sitting near her looked pale. "Don't even think about puking on me, dude," Tara said. The 463rd left the Green Zone for a FOB west of Baghdad, FOB Victory. Tara ramped up quickly, taking command of 4 teams, soldiers, medics, and interpreters that would make up her squad. She relied on her training and experiences in Korea, parts of her duties in Iraq, training and supervising Iraqi police were similar to training the Korean soldiers. Creating a functioning Iraq civilian police force came with challenges. Plenty of the Iraqi men vied for the good-paying job. Not all of them had what it takes. Tara and her squad trained the Iraqis in everyday responsibilities of police work. "I'm going to turn you guys into cops," she told them. She insisted they wear standard Iraqi police uniform without any personal regalia, taught them how to man police stations, schedule shifts, keep records, question the detainee, perform everyday law enforcement tasks, and maintain weapons discipline. She eliminated the practice of firing a weapon into the sky as a form of celebration. "Not cool, you guys, not cool. No more of that," she ordered. She quickly overcame the strong cultural bias against women. The Iraqis learned to trust her. There were other women on FOB Victory, a few in the 463rd, but none on Tara's squad, a relief to Tara. She always asked more of the few women she trained with or outranked. Sure, it was a double standard, but whatever one women soldier did poorly quickly reflected on all women soldiers. If a man screwed up, well, he was just a bad soldier, a screw up, a one-off. When women soldiers messed up, it was generalized. She's just a woman. They're all like that. Not having to hold another woman to a higher standard lessened the burden on Tara. Aside from a mountain of paperwork, Tara loved her new role, her soldiers, and the task of creating standalone independent Iraqi police facilities. She continued to train up her men, building teams that complemented strengths and weaknesses, keeping them sharp, tactical, alert, and squared away. "I want a high-speed squad," she said. She warmed to the challenge of doing the same thing with the Iraqis. The awkwardness she felt during the first few days in Iraq had disappeared. By early February, just a few weeks into her tour, Tara had won the respect of her men and the Iraqis. There'd been one more piece of business she needed to get out of the way, that or get redeployed home. Tara had reached the end of her enlistment, an Army career. Something that had seemed unlikely for the once runaway teenager now became her future. Her re-enlistment contract caught up with her during the first few days in Iraq. She signed. With that out of the way, she could fulfill the 12-month tour. It wouldn't last that long. Winter weather in Iraq fluctuates wildly. Subtropical aridity of the Arabian Desert clashes with the subtropical humidity in the Persian Gulf, creating extremes. Rain let loose on the 463rd almost every day for the first 2 weeks of February. Any road that wasn't blacktop had been damaged in the fighting, turned to mud, often shin deep. Squads rolled out, mindful of the weather, more precisely the mud. The roads leading to and from FOB Victory were a mix, some unpaved, some blacktop, many somewhere in between. Roads in disrepair posed a twofold threat. Humvees, could become bogged down in the mud, and piles of rubble lining the sides of the roads provided perfect camouflage for hidden IEDs. On the mid-morning of February 14th, everybody knows what day February 14th is, the rain stopped. Tara's squad had been ordered to roll out. The mission, the police station inspection. By mid-morning, they'd formed a convoy, 4 up-armored Humvees. Tara leading from the front. Her choice. First stop, convoy out, pick up the interpreters. Unlike most of the Terps that lived on the base, this interpreter lived off base with his family. Trouble started just a few clicks outside the wire, about 20 minutes from the fob. Coolant spit through heater vents in one of the Humvees. The cab filled with a sickening mist of radiator coolant. The team leader of the Humvee got on his comm. "We've got to stop," he radioed. "We've got some kind of leak or something. We're getting sprayed with antifreeze." "Roger that," Tara said, ordering the convoy to roll and stop. "Stay in your vehicles. Let me check it out, see if it's anything we can fix. Otherwise, we'll head back to the fob. Everybody, follow ops orders. Sweep 360, cover the rear, the front, all perimeters. Everybody stay sharp." Tara, in full battle rattle, ran back to the partially disabled Humvee. "Okay, what's the, oh, never mind. I see it, smell it. The cab's filled with radiator fluid. You guys are drenched. We can't fix this. We're rolling back to base. Cover your faces. Don't breathe that stuff in. Use your goggles. Keep your eyes protected. You'll be okay. We're only a few clicks out. Everyone, except the driver, get in back. Close the vents. Stuff some rags into them. Open the windows. Just hope we don't lose too much coolant and overheat. You guys good?" "Roger that, Staff Sergeant." "All right, let's move out." The convoy limped back to Fob Victory. Tara checked in with the platoon sergeant major. She explained the trouble. "So you didn't complete the mission?" he asked. "Well, no, Sergeant Major. I guess we'll secure other vehicles and roll out again in the morning." "Negative. Get back to transportation, secure a replacement vehicle, and complete the mission. Get the Terp, roll out, and inspect the police station. Complete the mission." With a momentary muteness, Sergeant Major, it's mid-afternoon. You want us to go back out now? You gotta be kidding. It's already late." "It is, so you'd better get moving." "Roger, Sergeant Major, and a happy Valentine's Day to you." "What's that, Sergeant?" "Happy Valentine's, Sergeant Major. It's Valentine's Day." The soldier in the transportation group, a friend of Tara's, looked out for her. He knew the idiosyncrasies of most of the vehicles in the motor pool and tried to outfit Tara and her squad with better performing Humvees. When the squad delivered this disabled Humvee, he pulled a good truck from the row of mission-ready vehicles. "I like this one, Staff Sergeant. It's one of the newer ones. Bring it back in one piece." "Roger that. Thanks for watching out for my squad," Tara said. "I'll try to bring her back in one piece." "Good luck." Outfitted with the replacement Humvee, Team 3, operational again, slipped into queue. The squad rolled out, headed for the original destination. 10 mics out, the convoy reached an overpass. They rode through and approached a section of route known as Racetrack Road. The road curved slightly.
Hey, Ron, I'm just gonna interrupt you.
I got a minute.
Okay, 1 minute.
Just quick enough, leading her squad out of the curve. Tara in country for just a month. Knew trouble when she saw it. She spotted rubble on the side of the road, broken up asphalt that had been hidden by the bend in the road. Something out of the ordinary, fresh, not weathered by rain and dust. Trouble. Tara knew it. Before she could halt the squad, she heard the explosion. Her eyes reflectively closed against the flash. The Humvee, her Humvee, filled with smoke. Through the haze, she could see blood spurting from her driver's neck. She looked at the others, their faces covered with dust and flecked with blood. "I'm in charge. It's my show. These are my men. Check on them. Driver, you okay? Thumbs up. Wait, what? You're bleeding badly. How the hell are you okay? Wow, I feel strange. My leg feels like it's on fire. Should I look? Don't look. You gotta look. Jesus, it is my leg. It's on fire. What the hell? Where's my other leg? Oh man, my leg's all torn up. That bone? Yes, bone. Flesh too. Wow, I'm losing blood, a lot of blood. Hey, how long can I lose that much blood and survive? Get out. I gotta get out. Come on, Tara, open the door. You locked it, fool. Slow down, don't panic. In her shock, her brain functioning in slow motion, Tara understood that unless the bleeding was stopped, she was going to die. She unlocked the door, but something still held her captive. Her Beretta 9mm, the pistol all MPs carried, had blown off her leg, but a lanyard she'd attached. I got one more page. Tara, tethered to the Humvee, was rapidly bleeding out. She, concerned about her men, she ordered the gunner to evacuate the Humvee. I can't, Staff Sergeant. Both my legs are broken. Sergeant Bridges, the assistant squad leader, pulled on the driver's door, stuck, pounded on it, then pulled with a newly discovered strength. The door flew open. He pulled the driver out, laid him on the ground. Soldiers rendered first aid. Bridges turned back to Tara, tugging on her. Stop. For God's sake, stop. I'm stuck, she shouted. Bridges knew he had to stop the bleeding. He pulled off his belt, cinched it around what was left of Tara's leg. Pain shot through Tara's body. Her boot and uniform had melted to her other leg. Bridges spotted a lanyard, pulled out his K-bar and sliced the line in two. He grabbed Tara's leg, almost severed, cradling it, trying to keep her from falling away from Tara's body while he pulled her out and carried to another Humvee, placing her gently inside. Let's see, a younger soldier jumped behind the wheel, U-turned the Humvee and raced back to Fob Victory. Medic searched Tara's body, looking for a place to insert an IV. Rubbed alcohol on Tara's neck. Don't even think about putting that needle into my neck, she screamed. There's no place else. I don't care. There's no place else. I don't care. Don't you dare stick me. I'll kill you if you do. And here we
Tara,
go.
thank you, Ron. Tara, how do you feel hearing your story reflected back to you, told back to you?
He did such a good job of telling it that it almost sounds like somebody else's story.
But it's you.
It is me. That's true.
What was the nature of your wounds?
I have a right amputation above the knee and third-degree burns on my left leg. And if Ron could have finished the story, he would have told you that I didn't have a heartbeat for 18 minutes while they were transporting me and they were trying to do CPR on me, and that caused me to have a brain injury. So I have a traumatic brain injury too.
What was your recovery like? And I know we're going off script a little bit just because, we heard so much of your story here and we have you here. I'd like to, get your perspective a little bit more. What was your recovery like? I mean, how long, how grueling? I
had multiple surgeries. I probably had over 24 surgeries, revisions, and then they clean it out and then they revise it a little more. And it was a very long recovery, and I was very angry. I was a very angry person back then, so I was not pleasant to be around. But I made it through lots of rehab and lots and lots of PT, and I ended up not walking at the end. They did a leg lengthening surgery on me, which was another 6 months of pain and excruciating pain. And so after that was over, I said goodbye and I left the Army, and it's been good for about 15 years, but I'm getting ready to have a surgery on my leg where they can surgically implant a metal rod in my leg, and then I can just click on a prosthetic if I want. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing this year.
And when do you feel that you were able to, grow beyond the anger?
Oh, definitely. Yes. I'm beyond that now. How'd
you do that?
A lot of it, I recently figured out why I was angry and a lot of things. So I went through the PATH program with the Travis Mills Foundation, and that was a very eye-opening program for me, and it taught me a lot about myself and about the PTSD that I still have from that event, and helped me channel it to have a more productive and fulfilling life.
What were you angry at?
I was angry at everybody. I was angry at God. I was angry at the world. I was angry at my nurses because they kept coming in and causing me more pain. And the physical therapists, oh my God, they were the most horrible people in the world to me back then. But like I said, a lot of it was time for me. I mean, that was 16 years ago. It was 2006 when that happened. So a lot of it was time. And, just I think telling my story over and over again has helped too.
That does help. Sharing
Yeah,
the
it
story
does help.
helps.
Yeah.
Boy, I'd like to open it up. Thank you so much, Tara. Thank you for coming on. And I know we're having a, part 2. Again, this is part 1 of a 2-part program that will be continued on March 20th. And I hope, Tara, you'll make it back then and share more of your story. But I'm going to open it up to Jennifer and Lana and Vivian. And I think we have, who else do we have here? I saw Marlene was with us. I want to ask you to kind of from the beginning. This is the question I have for the room. This one: why did you join the military? Who wants to answer that? Vivian?
I'll go first. Gosh, bit of a long story short, but I am Chinese American, born in San Francisco, California. But my family, they actually immigrated from China in 1957. They were political refugees, escaped communist China, landed in a refugee camp in Hong Kong, and then through President JFK's Emergency Immigration Act, came to America as political refugees. So I grew up very sheltered, grew up as a ballerina. My dad did everything to try to create a new life where I didn't know what suffering meant. And I really didn't. I was very fortunate in that. So, it wasn't until I got older when I learned, like, they escaped China with nothing but the clothes on their back. And in monsoons in Hong Kong in the refugee camp, having the roof of their, bamboo hut just completely ripped off, and all 7 children huddled in there. And so I think it wasn't until high school when I realized, oh my goodness, how am I going to be able to afford college? I need to go to school. And so I was, at the time, I had transitioned from being a ballerina to joining high school JROTC. And I really saw that as an opportunity to pay for school. So, and what really actually motivated me to join was I went to a military World War leadership camp down at Camp Pendleton, and all these JROTC cadets from all over the state came, and there was this one cadet, and he was actually of Vietnamese descent, and he actually immigrated to America. He wasn't born in the States, but I remember him up on the stage talking about how fortunate he was to be in the country, and just to have the opportunities and what his parents were doing. He felt like he had to give back, and I barely knew the kid, but I remember stepping out into the night and just realizing the impact that his words had on me. And it just dawned on me, oh my gosh, what have I done with my life? I owe something. I feel like I owe something. So I knew right off the bat that I couldn't afford college. So I was hell or high water, try to find some kind of ROTC scholarship. Was ready to go to UC Davis in California, didn't have a full ride or anything. Still didn't know how I was going to pay for school. And all of a sudden at the last minute, my acceptance to West Point arrived. And I remember big curse word going through my head going, yes, this is happening. I didn't think I was going to get in. I did it to just appease my family, appease my coaches, appease my instructors. I never thought I would get in. And then I went. So that's what caused me to join, was really I knew I had to do something to give back, and that was the best opportunity. And I've never regretted that decision since.
And you are still you're a lieutenant colonel. You are in the reserves, and you're going on active duty when?
I go on active duty orders in the summer to attend a war college. So I'll be headed to the Eisenhower School at Fort McNair at one of the National Defense University war colleges.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vivian. And we're going to come back to you. We're going to come back to all the veterans here. How about you, Marlene? Do you want to share why you joined the military? If you could unmute.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Actually, I it was something I wanted to do from a really young age. I think it might have been around 5 years old. I used to run around my house with a camouflage hat on, and it's kind of something we got from from like a flea market that my dad had bought me, and it was just something I wanted to do. But actually, growing up, my stepfather was a sheriff, and I saw his life as a sheriff, and I felt like I'd rather go in that direction. So I was actually worked for the sheriff's department. I was a sheriff's officer for 2.5 years before I actually joined the Army. But unfortunately, not like my father. He spent 35 years in the sheriff's department. I spent 2.5, and I did not enjoy it at all. And immediately after leaving the sheriff's department, I enlisted, and literally 12 days after enlistment, I was in boot camp. I just feel like for me, the reason they're joining is I think it's like the greatest honor you could ever have, to serve your country. That's no other reason, I think.
So no regrets.
None, sir. I regret getting injured. Yeah, allowing the enemy to get me. That's probably my only regret.
You probably had very little choice over that, I imagine. How about you, Lana?
My story is not quite as exciting. It was a combination of both wanting to be an astronaut and being incredibly bored not being an astronaut. I had, since I was 5 years old, wanted to go to space, and didn't seem to acknowledge that my eyesight was like barely above, somewhere around like a fruit bat type of situation. It was not good. And so I went to college. I was going to be an engineer, got my engineering degree, decided not to do RTC, was going to do one path or the other, either go into the military or go to college. Decided to go the civilian engineering route, and got a job in civil engineering, and then walked into my boss's office one day and was like, okay, staring at blueprints with like a little rolly ruler to estimate a multi-million-dollar building based on like linear feet of drywall is a far cry from like going into space. So I think I am going to go ahead and join the service, which for those who knew me actually was less surprising than it probably should have been, because I was known for just rolling up and making weird decisions. And so I decided to enlist after having gotten my bachelor's and master's in engineering. And to make my parents extra proud and excited, I decided not to go in as an engineer either. Decided to go in as a human intelligence collector and interrogator, and enlisted instead of going officer, and all of the things that would make them really excited. And I went. I signed my contract after we had gone into Afghanistan, but shortly, I left for basic training after maybe 3 weeks after we had entered Iraq. So when I signed my contract, we were in one war that we still thought we were getting out of pretty quickly. And instead, by the time I left, we were in two. So
how hard did your parents try to talk you out of it?
Oh, they didn't. They had learned their lesson.
Okay.
That there was no way. I believe my father had actually also enlisted after he graduated from college, but it was because it was during Vietnam, and he knew that if you enlisted, he was going to get drafted because he was no longer in college. And he said, if you enlisted, you could choose your job. And whereas if he had just gotten drafted, obviously
Right.
he would not. So his reaction was essentially like, well, she'll learn, she'll figure it out.
Well, Lana, you might not make it to the moon, but we won't be joining us on March 20th because you'll be at a place that's kind of like the moon, Baffin Island, which is north of Canada, west of Greenland. Here's a picture of lovely Baffin Island. For people who want to see it on a map, here it is. What are you going there for?
It's an absurd adventure that I got roped into. I'm actually going as part of a very small group of veterans who are participating in both a National Geographic expedition to look at the impact of nature and natural awe and natural beauty, and the effect that that can have on the overall well-being and psychology of not just veterans, but anybody. And so we're going to be doing some medical tests, and we are going to be catching the Northern Lights at some of their peak, at kind of their peak, really.
That is so cool. That's such a cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah. I probably will feel a lot better after tomorrow when I decide to learn cross-country skiing, which I'm going to be doing for about 60 miles starting Friday. So.
Well, we'll get back to you, Lana, because I know you won't be joining us on the 20th, so we want to make sure we cover more of your story tonight. Jennifer, how'd you end up in the Army?
Man, I was looking for a 7-Eleven and I took a wrong turn and there was the recruiting station. No, not even anything as hilarious as that. I was in my senior year of high school when September 11th occurred. And so, of course, the military and our entry into Afghanistan was very much at the forefront. And I got a call from the recruiter, and I think it was the time when we still had phones attached to the walls instead of our hands. So I, picked up the phone one day, and the recruiter was, I think, just making like the calls that he does to the high school rosters. And I said, yes, yeah, I'd love to meet with you. I think I was just looking for a new challenge. I had, of course, like Vivian, I was trying to figure out a way I would pay for college partially. I was 17. And so I guess, what was it? It would have been like November, I think, October, November-ish, when the recruiters came to my house to talk to my parents too. And as far as the reaction to my parents, I think they were like, oh, Jennifer's at it again. Fine, we might as well just sign, or if she's just going to do it in February when she turns 18. And they are actually on the call today. I don't think they're on camera, but if they want to fact check me on anything I just said, they are welcome to pop on.
Oh, let's see if I could find them. Yeah, I would love them to comment about what they thought when, you announced that you were going to join the Army. Let's see if you could out them.
Yeah, I was looking for them earlier. They said they're not on camera, but they're listening. So
okay, they may be watching on Facebook or YouTube or something like that.
Possibly.
So why don't you tell us like how they reacted?
Oh my goodness, you're asking me to remember like 21 years ago now. I think they were a little taken aback. The military wasn't like a huge thing in our family. One of my uncles had served in the National Guard during Vietnam, and I think my younger brother had been talking about joining the Marines, which he ended up not joining the Marines. Out of two brothers, I was the only one to join the military. So I think it was just kind of a surprise. And, I was like, I'll do it for 6 years for the college money, and 6 years turned into 12. And then after you're past that 10-year mark, you're like, might as well do the last 8. And then I got my retirement paperwork in last year, and I was like, I don't know if I'm done yet, but yeah.
So it's a good fit. I mean, it ended up being a good fit for you, the Army.
It's been really great. I never served active duty. I did join the reserves and have stayed in the reserves. I did happen to join one of the most deployable reserve jobs as a civil affairs specialist.
Right.
Yeah, it's just, I've met great people. I've had great adventures, some more adventurous than others. And I met my spouse in the military, and yeah, it's pretty much been, if I look back on where my life is now, that step into the recruiting office just led me on this journey that I don't think I otherwise would have.
And you probably don't know this, Jennifer, but your story is going to be excerpted in our next VBC magazine issue, which will be coming out in April. Ron very graciously gave us permission to run an excerpt from the book. And so that will be your story. So our readers will be able to read about your, and I'll ask you, let me start with you asking the next round of questions, which is, when you ended up going to war, was war what you expected it to be, or was it somehow different?
Oh, I don't know that I could articulate what my expectations were. For context, the unit that I deployed with, I came to that unit out of basic and AIT, to which the Iraq war started while I was in AIT, and we thought all the drill sergeants were messing with us, and it was part of the exercise because we were out in the middle of nowhere, North Carolina. But the unit was gone, and they didn't get back until a couple months later. And when we reported to Moab Station in 2004, it was 365 days to the time that they had left that unit from their demobilization from their first tour. So there was a lot of war stories that had been circulating in that year. So I have to think that I had maybe a okay gauge on what to expect, but man, I stepped off that plane in Afghanistan, and it was just, I don't know that Ron's the writer, so I struggle to articulate that feeling of having, being in a country I'd barely heard about before 2001.
Did you feel you were well trained for what you encountered there?
Yes, I think I was very well trained. I will especially say that in 2007 in Iraq, when my vehicle did get hit by the IED, we did immediately start the actions that we had drilled on over and over and over again at Moab Station, which was hit the gas, get out of the kill zone, because you don't know if there's an ambush coming after that explosion. I don't know why I stopped. I think my TC finally yelled stop, and then the other vehicles circled around, and we all immediately turned center, got the aid kit, and started patching each other up. Not to spoil your magazine or the book, I will say that of a bad situation, we probably got the best case of it, because everyone in my Humvee survived. And in fact, the person who was most seriously injured ended up back on duty and jumping out of airplanes and medically retired at 19 years of service. So there is that happy ending.
What were the nature of your wounds?
So I was the driver, which then also set me up for a lot of woman driver jokes the next couple of weeks after. But the type of IED that struck us was called an explosively formed projectile. So you think a Folgers coffee can, and you take a thin copper plate and you make a little convex or concave shape, and the explosion pushes it outward and basically turns it into a molten bullet. And it came through the passenger side of the Humvee, somewhere between the front and back seat. And it traveled through. And so I have I had a peppering of shrapnel on my face. I had something come in my cheek and go out my chin, all of the neck, my arms that were on the wheel. And then also I managed to get an electrical burn in an explosion because I had my radio wire for my headphones. I had placed it behind my back to kind of keep it out of the way. And when it got sliced from the explosion, it made contact on my back. So I did manage to get electrically burned as well. But very superficial injuries. I was returned to duty that day. We all made it to the Combat Surgical Hospital in the Green Zone in Baghdad, and they scrubbed up my face. They scanned me, made sure I wasn't internally bleeding, gave me a Ziploc baggie full of Percocet and a uniform that was 2 sizes too big, and sent me on my way.
And here's a photo of you getting receiving the Purple Heart Award. I read, Jennifer and Vivian and Lana and Tara, that since World War II, 2 million Purple Hearts have been awarded to people. Only 500 women. You're one of the very few.
I've heard the number up more towards 1,000. I will say for DoD's part, sometimes Purple Heart medals are awarded years after because there's more paperwork being done. So it can be hard sometimes to track, but it is a lower number than most men. Yes.
Way lower. It's just stunning to me, but I think it's something that we're seeing now, and we're going to be seeing, of course, into the future. We like to do a brief station break just to remind you who we are and what we're doing. This is a Veterans Breakfast Club. This is our VBC happy hour. We do this every Monday night at 7 p.m. And we also have in-person programs that we do that we start up in the nice weather. First one will be March 29th. We also have a podcast hosted by Sean Hall. Sean, what is our podcast subject this week?
Yes, after a month of reruns while I was out, we're hitting the ground running. Still in season 7, over 100 episodes into the scuttlebutt. We have the Pan Am Museum Foundation. For longtime listeners of VBC, you may remember us doing a Pan Am flight attendants program last year. We followed that up with the Pan Am Museum Foundation, Linda Freer, John Lutich, and John Marshall, an Army vet. They joined me for this conversation to sort of expand on that happy hour that we did with them last year. It's a really great conversation. I highly recommend popping over to our website and watching it on YouTube. You could download it across podcast platforms, listen to it on your way in for traffic or wherever. But really interesting history about Pan Am and their relationship with the U.S. government, how they were involved in a lot of from World War I on all the way up through, I think it was Desert Storm Shield. And we kind of go over the whole history. It was really fun having them on.
Yeah, very closely. They've been involved in a lot of military operations from the very beginning until they exited the airfare airline industry in the early 90s. Next week we'll be back on March 13th, which is Canine Veterans Day. And for Canine Veterans Day, we thought we'd get a bunch of dogs and have them share their stories, but we might have to have dog handlers with them to kind of interpret for them. So we're asking if you know any dog handlers, if you know any people who worked with, military dogs in any branch of service, would love to have them come on. Roger Junt, I know that you were a dog handler. Would love to have you on next week just to share a little bit about your relationship, what the dogs did. I know that Ben Wright is very familiar with military dogs in the Air Force. So if you know a dog handler, if you worked with dogs in the military, please join us next week for Canine Veterans Day, March 13th. We also are having our March 29th Vietnam Veterans Day celebration. And man, we have over 300 people registered for this event. It'll be online and in person, both. It'll be in person here in Pittsburgh, and then we'll be streaming it online. Every Vietnam veteran, anybody who served between 1955 and 1975, will receive a welcome home gift bag. I think Ron Farina is registered for this event online. I'm very grateful for that. And We'll put it in the mail to you. If you can't, we'll put the welcome home gift bag in the mail to you if you can't be there in person. If you are there in person, we'll give it to you there. It's a special day. It's an important day for our Vietnam veterans. So join us if you can. I will put the registration and the information about this event here in the chat. I'll also put information, my email address. Send me an email. If you don't get this magazine, we publish it quarterly. We take the stories that we hear at the Veterans Breakfast Club. I'm a writer, write them up and publish them. And so if you don't get it in the mails because we don't have your address, we'd love to send one to you. We also send out boxes. Jim Jamison, who's with us, sends boxes around the country to people who distribute them at their libraries and legions and living communities. This is a major advertising that we do. This is how people found out about the Veterans Breakfast Club. So if you don't get it, let me know. Todd, TODD, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. That's Todd, TODD, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. And then finally, we have a survey, very quick 3-minute survey, 3 questions. How would you rate this program? What did you like or not like about it? And how can we improve? We really use the responses that we get in this survey to improve our programming. So please do take it if you get a chance. Again, thank you, Sean, for putting that there in the chat. I want to invite people to ask, Chris Parolo, I want to invite people to make comments, ask questions. Roger Husen, you should be asleep by now. Shame on you for still being with us. Please do. We're having open conversation here with these remarkable women. Can I ask you, Lana, what was the nature of your wounds? How did you get wounded?
I was wounded while I was in central Iraq, also by an IED. I had a severe traumatic brain injury. I actually had a hemorrhage that was not diagnosed. It was 2005. There was no focus yet on traumatic brain injuries. I ended up having brain surgery for it later in 2008 when they finally figured out she's not just going crazy. It was a fun adventure of trying to figure out what was wrong while still convincing the Army not to strip me of my security clearance. I also had severe nerve damage and other resulting issues from both the combination of the brain injury and about 2 weeks before that had been in a very severe car accident, essentially, while we were in a Humvee, and had broken my ankle, which there was no imaging at the base. And so they were like, oh, it looks like it's probably just sprained. Wrap that up, have some Motrin, see you later. Turned out it was broken. And then because of the brain injury, ended up never healing. So I was re-tearing ligaments all the time. I had severe nerve damage that was not healing. And so ultimately in 2019, after having gone on vacation and still managing to tear 3 ligaments and 2 tendons by stepping onto, I was on a boat and stepped down as a swell came up and tore some ligaments, and I was like, that's it, I'm done. I'm on vacation. Can I just get through a vacation? Actually, Tara's talking about the osseointegration procedure. And so now here we go. I actually have I actually can't see myself on this, but yeah, I have the metal rod implant type of mamma and sweet little tattoo to go with it. But yeah.
We have
a metal rod from here to up to my knee.
So osseointegration, we also have an article about that in our next BBC magazine, because one of our Vietnam vets is getting it for his arm as he's being a VA guinea pig actually for it. Fascinating. Let me ask you then, Tara, was war what you expected?
Oh, Tara's muted.
War was I honestly had no idea what to expect. I felt like I was well trained for it, and I was able, to train my soldiers up. But the first time I looked at Iraq outside of the fob, I was like, "What in the hell is this?" There was like cardboard shacks, and children were playing in swamp water, like worse than swamp water, and there was bombed out vehicles and just destruction everywhere. So I didn't even know what to expect, but it didn't meet my expectations, if that makes sense.
It did not meet your expectations.
No.
How about, okay, I ask really A, dumb questions, and B, hard questions sometimes, I think, because I wouldn't know how to answer any of these, but how about the way you reacted when you were being shot at, when you were in distress? I mean, did anything about your reaction to the stress of the situation surprise you? Were you better with it? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I absolutely went into shock instantly when that happened, and all of my training went out the window, which thank God for my assistant squad leader. He just jumped in there and saved the day. He saved all of our lives, got us out of there with a tourniquet on it, and it was amazing. And the reason I know I went through shock is because when I look back at that memory, it's all in slow motion. Like everything is happening just a tick at a time. So that's how I know that I was in shock instantly from the time the blast went off.
Jennifer.
I just wanted to add, and probably every veteran on this call who's been in combat could attest to this, is that the people that you meet in training, the highest speed soldier that you see stateside, you have no idea how they'll react when the bullets start flying or things start popping off. And that person that you think is the worst performing soldier, suddenly they do a 180, and the training can help I call it your monkey brain, because that's where you go back to when your higher level thinking shuts down, or it should probably be lizard brain, but that helps you get through it. But really, there's no predicting.
And I've heard that so many times. There's no predicting. I mean, the person who looks like Sergeant Rock out there in training, might shut down in the combat situation, and somebody who seems to be kind of, quiet and not as tough, doesn't flinch. It's so. Vivian.
So my son just came in perfect timing.
Can we say hi to your 5-year-old? Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
He's getting ready for bed or bath time, so there may be a grandmother barging in to wrangle him at some point.
What is his name, Vivian?
His name is Carter.
Carter. Okay, so if Carter came to you at age 18 and said, "Mom, I'm joining the Army," what would you say?
Don't go Navy or I disinherit you.
Excuse me?
I'd say don't go to the Naval Academy or we'll disinherit you or disown you. We're already inculcating. My husband's also a West Point graduate, so
okay. All right.
We're working on it.
Can I ask you, Vivian, what your experience of war was? Was it your first experience of kind of, being in a war zone, an active war zone? Was it what you expected?
Yes and no. When I came in, when I went to West Point and entered, it was in time of peace, and 9/11 happened right my first semester that I was there, and the realization that the next 4 years is devoted to actually training for war. So that's not what I knew I was getting into, but I knew that I wouldn't pull out of the school that we would go to war, and so we would see friends, graduates, go on and pass. Killed in action, and so that was just devastating, in knowing that that's what we were training for and moving towards. But I would definitely say that those moments of grit, fear, adrenaline were actually outnumbered by the moments of loneliness and maybe opportunities of kindness and little pockets of beauty that comes with desolation of war, the grittiness and the cruelty of war. So I'm a significant introvert, and I would find myself, in these little random moments of just like kind of disappearing into my head, whether it's on a helicopter and we're flying through like the lush valleys and going, holy moly, this is beautiful, or standing in the darkness on the Afghanistan side, because we're right on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. And behind us, you know, we've got the generators and the lights of the base. But as you look into the border, it's sheer blackness in Pakistan. Like the disparity was just significant, but you also just felt like so alone in the darkness.
Right.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that there's a lot of free time in your head to kind of like think, to also find little pockets of beauty here and there, and also really kindness. The fact that, you know, there was times when I was traveling throughout Iraq or even Afghanistan where I was kind of left to fend for myself as a commander, and if I had to go travel to see troops. It was, you know, just hopping on whatever helicopters could get out there, or asking random units like, hey, I know you don't know me, but can you transport me to this FOB, to this COP? And they would just, without batting an eye, just let me hop on a convoy with them. Or I would be like the sole woman on a COP, and they would carve out space for me to house and feed me, but I was still alone, even though I was surrounded by men. So again, I was never alone in terms of our population, but I felt alone because I was a woman. And not that they were trying to ostracize me, but it was just, that was the nature of the game. I think as women, you know, you have to uphold this image of grit, aloofness, competency, this higher standard, but at the same time, it's very lonesome having to maintain that image. So it was what I expected, but it also wasn't what I expected. I did not expect to find kindness in beauty.
You know, the great writer Tim O'Brien, the Vietnam War veteran, and probably the greatest writer I think to come from the Vietnam War, along with Carl Merlantes, said that war is really just life, but condensed and much more extreme. It's just like everything to the extreme and condensed in, you know, days, months, years. But you see like the extremes of, you know, beauty, the extremes of kindness and love, and you know, also the ugliness, of course, of it all. And I'm getting a sense of that from your description. Tara, you have answered a couple things here in the chat, colorfully. Cliff asked how you got out, let me see, I have to scroll back here in the chat. How you got, hold on a second here.
He asked how long it took me, how long it took them to get me out of Iraq.
Oh, how long it took you. Okay, how long it took. And how long did it take?
Probably about a week, although I don't remember that time very well. I was pretty highly medicated, but they stabilized me and they sent me to launch school, and then they stabilized me further, a few more surgeries, and then I was on my way to Walter Reed. But they didn't keep me at Walter Reed because I had they didn't have a level 1 poly trauma center at that time, I think. So they sent me down to BAMC, and that's where I'm at still. So
okay. And then you also commented on Chris Perolo's correct observation. And I should have said this, that women have been authorized for direct combat since 2013, I think.
They were, yes, but women were serving in combat roles, you know, the whole front line, like women are not in the front lines. That's totally not true, because all of us were in the front lines and we were all in before 2013.
You were all, yes, right. You were all serving in combat before 2013.
Folks, I'd apologize. I had no intention to disparage anyone. Women have been in harm's way with the military since the beginning, all these years. But the statistic, Todd, you sound surprised by the statistic. As far as charging on a battlefield, the trenches of World War I, things like that. Now that can happen now, but it couldn't happen then. So you've got this incredible history of battles which accumulated those awards. Now we're seeing the women, God forbid ever they catch up, but now we see that on the rise. And that accounts for, I think, that number. That's all I meant to say.
And that's
Todd,
absolutely true. Absolutely correct, Chris. Thank you. Yeah.
I'd like to just chime in because I was actually part of a lawsuit that challenged that combat exclusion policy that was launched in, I believe we filed it in November of 2012. And the other three women, I was not a named plaintiff. It's Hagar v. Panetta, if you want to Google it. But our whole point was that the policy did not match the reality on the ground, and that because women were, the term they used was attached to units rather than assigned, they often were not left with the paperwork to prove their service. So in turn, when they would go to the VA and say, look, I've got PTSD from these wounds, the VA would look at the paperwork and say, but there's no way you could have suffered these injuries. Thankfully that is turned around at VA now, but it really did women a disservice to not have the policy. And actually it probably did commanders a disservice because there was that need for women to be in the MPs, to be with the interpreters. I can't tell you how many women I patted down and I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I'm a civil affairs person. I'm supposed to be talking to them, because there was just no other service member that was trained to do that. So I think it was a time to just make the policy match the reality, and going forward, hopefully, the women coming after us will have a little bit easier time.
We have another pioneer with us, Kathy Sylvia. If you would like to come on, if you would like to, I think you're unmuted. You've made a few comments here in the chat. Kathy graduated in the first class that admitted women to West Point. And
my camera's kind of goofed up, Todd, but it's because Vivian was texting me back and forth. But the deal is, just like she was saying, it's usually a lawsuit that actually gets the policy amended for women. I mean, I was in a field artillery 105 towed howitzer unit before the policy allowed me to be there. And I also served in the French army in the same 105 unit before the policy allowed me to. But anyway,
wow.
that's kind of funny, but I've been a trailblazer too. But similar to what everybody said, being in combat, I was there, and I was in Iraq in 2000, actually on the border, Kuwait and Iraq in 2004. And the people that you're with, you're going to get that disparity. Some people can handle it, some people can't, and everything in between. So I just couldn't remember what day it was. I was between a number of different camps, and I had a number of different, the organizational structure was it was like a conglomerate. It was National Guard with active duty, with reserve units, some of who knew each other, some of them didn't, and then the truck units there was a couple of brothers in the truck unit because they were all National Guard from Ohio. So they're in the same community and they know each other. They grew up together. So it was really nice to see them, but it was not so nice to have an active duty battalion give you the business or, razzing you for being a reserve battalion. That, we're all on the same team. So anyway, but, I like this forum. I signed it. Sorry, I came in late, but in terms of the policy, there was actually, and the post 9/11 veterans here may not recall, but when they wrote the MTO, the modified table of equipment and people, so you have your slot, you're a company clerk, you're a driver, you're a supply sergeant, all those positions have a paragraph and line number. And there was MTO specification in there that said male only. And that Vince Brooks, actually, I think 94, they may have removed it, but it was always a joke. And you're right, they attached women first just to get around that thing. They got around that thing for since the Revolutionary War. They William Cathro, is it Cathro? These gals were serving during the Civil War and Revolutionary War, and they dressed up and they served until they got wounded. So being in combat for me, How is that different? There was, I needed some, I think the only thing that wasn't really there was a place to chill out. So I'm from Boston, so the Red Sox won the World Series when I was there, but I didn't find out till 6 o'clock in the morning, and everybody's clapping and my brothers are emailing me. I checked my emails. I'm like, yay, go Red Sox. So it was kind of funny, but it was pretty neat.
I encourage you, Kathy, to contact Deb Bussinger, who just put a question here to you in the chat. She would love to interview you. She does interviews at the Military Aviation Preservation Society Museum in Ohio. They do wonderful work. We also have another pioneer, a World War II veteran with us here on Zoom that I want to acknowledge, this being Women's History Month. The Navy really didn't want women to join the Navy in World War II, but they had to do it. They had to accept 86,000 of them because there simply was not the manpower to cover what they needed. Julia Parsons was one of those people who answered the call. Julia just celebrated her 102nd birthday last Thursday. Hi, Julia.
Hi. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great.
Julia was a Navy wave. She was a code breaker in World War II, doing really important work in the Shark Division at the Naval Communication Annex in Washington, D.C., decoding Enigma. And we had she's a legend. She's literally, world famous. And we're very proud that she's a member here of the Veterans Breakfast Club. We had a wonderful little party for her last Thursday. I thought I'd share a few pictures. Julia, did you enjoy your little party?
Indeed, I did. It was great. I should learn to trust you because I always figure who's going to drive across town just to tell an old lady happy birthday. But they did. I don't know how many were there. Did they get a count of people?
Yeah, we ended up, it was a smaller space. There you are blowing out the candles that spell OMG for 102 years old. And so Julia, it took a while for Julia to blow this last one out. And people thought that I set you up, Julia, that I made it one of those trick candles that you can't blow out. I said, why would I do that to Julia? But yeah, we ended up having about 50 people, and they did drive from all over, drove from Ohio to come and see you. And I think they would have, if we had really publicized it more, we would have gotten a lot more, but we wouldn't have had the space for them. So thank you, Julia, for allowing us to kind of pay tribute to you.
Well, thank you for doing it. It was just perfect. The weather held, and it was great.
How terrific.
And they were all talking about what you're going to do next year for my 103rd.
Yes. It turns out Julia told me that a 118-year-old woman passed away recently. So is that your new goal, 118?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, why not? Absolutely. Thank you so much, Julia. Can I ask, I'm looking at the clock. I see it's 8:34. We're past a little time that we normally go. I wonder if Kendra Piper is Kendra a veteran.
Kendra just signed in.
Yeah. Is she one of our veterans? I'm not quite sure.
Kendra is one of our vets.
Okay. Because I know her as Kendra Garza. So let me ask Kendra just to say hello. And oh, hi, Kendra. I see you walking. Can you walk and talk? Hi, Kendra. Oh, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Must be a problem with the audio. But this is what I want to, I want to first of all thank Ron and of course, Roger for joining us from Belgium, and of course Jennifer and Tara and Vivian. Lana will not be able to join us next 2 weeks from today on March 20th. You'll be on the moon or somewhere like that. But we're going to miss you. Thank you so much for joining us, Lana. I hope Kendra does join us again. Marlene, I hope you join us again. Also, Vivian, We would love to hear more of your story. I know that we just scratched the surface tonight. I will pester you a little bit to join us again and maybe do something like a podcast with each of you, because it's just, your stories are so interesting and important. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. Ron, I appreciate it. Thanks for your work. You should write about your own Marine Corps service. Just saying. And hey, take care. Enjoy the evening, and we'll see you next week. All right.
Right.